We what? Yeah, we were going to start today with our three guests. We have guests from the education field, since that's been a big deal lately as to whether or not it's safe for the schools to open or not. And so we have Leila Counts, who's a TUSD School Board member and has had a lot of background in early childhood education and training, and her family owns the Sandbox preschool, so she's kind of got a breadth of knowledge. And then we also have Nathan Davis and Taylor Cleland, who are teachers. And I think you guys can fill me in a little bit, but I believe between the three of you, we might have at least two, maybe three school districts represented today because of where you teach and where Nathan is going to running for the school board. So Doug Ducey just had a press conference, and it might still be going on right now. And he did talk about the schools today. It didn't seem like too much is different. He did address the achievement gap and the technology gap. He still said that there's going to be parent choice and school choice. And one bright spot was that he said he was going to put $300 million, I guess, from the CARES Act into the safe opening of the schools. It didn't sound to me as if he was delaying the opening at all. And so I think it's still relevant to talk about what's going on, because there's a lot of concern that it's not safe for the teachers or the families or the students, and that, you know, if you have a school that has a case, then you're going to have to shut down. And so it's going to be a little bit chaotic. And so I think while we're waiting for Leila to come in, we'll start with Nathan and Taylor and talk about, you know, being school teachers and how they're preparing and what they think of the situation. So I will mute myself.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I teach at Pueblo High School in TUSD, which is also a Title I school. So we definitely have been having a lot of conversations about technology and equity. TUSD has actually put a bunch of money into its digital program, and we are, by opening, we are going to be a 1-to-1 district. So that's huge, and will be something that will impact us after this is over, because that technology is not going to go away. So that's actually exciting. One thing that I think is just so weird right now is that because the situation has been changing, for me, the last 2 or 3 months has been, we'll have a meeting every week or two with, here's the system that you're going to be operating, go try to plan your year. And then 2 weeks later, half of that has changed. And it's not anybody's fault. And the admin are doing an amazing job of keeping us up to date. It's just, it's changing so much that on top of having to plan for a new situation, we're not totally sure what situation we're planning for, which is definitely tricky. I know personally I've been working on kind of thinking about activities rather than whole lessons or whole days, so that I have something modular I can move around. Our school is, and I think most of TUSD has adopted, or TUSD has adopted a policy where if students are on campus, they will be in learning centers where they are supervised, but they will be taking online learning. So whether you're at home or you're at the school, your teacher is teaching you online. But there is still some concern over, we currently have the option, at least at my site, to teach from home or school. There's still people that are concerned that even going into the school to teach, you know, you're in a space with recycled air and that sort of thing. So there's still a lot of conversations going on about, you know, and what do we do if our students are not logging in? We do have, you know, we have an attendance policy, but normally we have a certain set of procedures that we can use to try to get those kids to come to school. What happens if we're not reaching them online? So it's just, there's a lot of, it's logistically challenging at almost every step.
Yeah, and it's very similar for me. So my name is Nathan Davis. Like my wife, I teach in TUSD, and I'm also a candidate for the Amphi School Board. My site is a little bit different. I teach at Lawrence 3-8. About half of my students are Native, majority belonging to the Pasquayaqui Nation. And that community, like many other Native communities throughout Arizona, has been hit quite hard. A lot of my students know a loved one who has been affected by this pandemic. And so that is something that we are being very cognizant of at my site. Is just how do we reopen safely? How do we continue to reach the students who suffer from many of the same socioeconomic issues that are particular to New Pascua, but also we see throughout Arizona. In terms of Amphi, I have been speaking with Amphi teachers this entire week. The superintendent recently released his plan. And essentially what it comes down to is they will have a dual model. The online will be through their online only school, which was previously established. The in-person model will start online until it is safe. Superintendent Jaeger has said that he will give teachers and students a 2 weeks heads up when they will return to the classroom. This went against what many teachers wanted. Many teachers wanted a hybrid model like we've seen more on the East Coast. Superintendent Jaeger has his reasons, but one thing that I have found is that speaking with teachers is they do not feel consulted. That is a main reason why I am running for the Amphi School Board, is to bring a teacher's voice, my own personal one, but to also be a conduit to bring the voices of the hundreds of teachers and the thousands of employees in Amphi to that decision-making process. And do we have Leila who can speak from her end?
I think she's still trying to get in, but I was wondering if you could tell us what grades you're teaching, or if there's things that you are doing differently in order to prepare. I had a long conversation with a friend of mine who is going to be teaching first graders remotely, and she's got some serious challenges with children that young being on tablets either in their parents' houses or in the school. So if you could tell us what grades and if there's something special you're changing in order to reach them.
So we'll start with me because I teach the youngest. I teach 7th and 8th grade. My school is a 3rd through 8th grade, so it's a little weird that way. We are fortunate in that our administration was able to get starting from last year, a grant through Verizon. So all of our students have iPad. All of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders have iPads with 4G. And that was a blessing because we had been using them all year. Many of my students understood how to use the iPads, how to use different programs with them. And so that was great on my end. Even with that, even with students who had been using technology for 7 months, there was still difficulty for them being able to use some of the programs, difficulty for them understanding the expectations of what learning on remotely over Zoom meant. And fourth quarter, we did the best we could, but this quarter we are definitely preparing for. Well, actually, we are and we aren't. It is so incredibly difficult because in TUSD we are getting a framework. We do kind of have an idea of what is happening now. But that is something that we have been having to tackle with, is how do we plan for something that we don't understand and we don't know. And that is why, back in April, me as a TUSD teacher and me as a candidate for the Amphi School Board, I was saying, back in April, we need a plan for being remote next year. We need to have a plan, fully understand, and we need to tell the teachers in June so that they can prepare in July, because we're not sitting on our butts. This isn't a vacation. This isn't a full-time vacation. We don't go to Bali every summer. We spend most of it working part-time, essentially lesson planning for the next year.
Yeah, and that was kind of with my earlier point, that one thing that's been so challenging is even as we try to plan, it's been such a moving target, and that framework wasn't in place, even though a lot of people, including the admin, are doing work to get it. I teach high school, but primarily freshmen, and a huge obstacle there that we've been talking about a lot is we have no idea which middle schools our freshmen are coming from, and we have no idea what technology they were using fourth quarter, even though if they were in district, they had access to a computer. We don't. Our 10th through 12th, if they were at Pueblo, we know what instruction they got. So one of the things we're having to talk about as freshman teachers specifically is how do we get our kids using the technology? Because normally when they come into me, I think there's a big misconception with the younger generation that they've grown up on technology. They've grown up on phones. They don't know how to use the computer. They don't really understand what a document is or what an email is and why we would use that. So a big part of my instruction as a freshman English teacher is the idea of, you know, what are these? When do we use them? And that was a challenge in person when I had them all with their computer in front of me. And we are anticipating that that's going to be a big challenge first quarter, is just getting the kids comfortable with that technology from a distance. We do expect that the high school students are a little bit more able to do the online learning, but there's still a lot of independence and time management that's in there. The other issue is kids being in front of a screen all day. We all know how hard that is. So I know, like at my site, the schedule is incorporating breaks so that the students don't have to you know, be sitting for 8 hours, but that's challenging too. Like I will be double teaching all of my classes. So we'll be on a block schedule and I will teach an A session and a B session and the kids will have break and homework time on the other session, which I think is a good solution, but it's just another layer of logistics that have to change in order for all of this to work.
So Leila Counts got on. You're there, right? Leila?
I am here. Hello,
Okay, good.
everybody. Sorry for being late.
On time.
So go, you're up. Nathan and Taylor
Okay.
have been filling in for you.
Oh, great. So would you just like me to give a quick, brief update on where we're at as far as with TUSD and reopening of schools?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just got done watching the governor's press conference on where I thought he was going to be giving us more information on the reopening of schools, but unfortunately,
I lost her.
can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me? Thumbs up? Okay. So there was not a lot of information that was given to us other than what we've already been told, which really is disappointing, and it's very vague, and it's really difficult for school leaders, school board members to be making these really challenging decisions when I feel that the federal government and our Republican-led state government is kind of shirking their responsibilities and trying to pass the buck because they don't want to upset people. So
She might be having connection problems.
Yes, when she was trying to get in. Oh, there you're back. Oh,
wait, I was gone?
Yeah.
Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Well, I said to Pam earlier, I think this is a classic example of why it's so difficult to do online learning. I'm one of the hundreds of thousands of family that has slow internet. You know, we don't have fast internet in my house. It's quite expensive, and with multiple systems going on, it's just an incredible challenge. So I don't know where I got cut off, but I can talk about where was I cut off?
You were saying that the Republican state government is not being helpful.
Yeah, not being helpful, not being clear enough to help us reopen schools safely.
So, Leila, if I can ask, where do you think the line is? And I agree with you. There should be clear rules from the state about uniformity on important things like class size and masks and minimum time spent. But then there has to be some flexibility for each local district. So where is that line?
I think that the line comes with some of just the basic standard protocols. I think if we could have had a statewide, I think if we could have had a national mask mandate, but at least a statewide mask mandate, we would be in a lot better position to be reopening our schools in just a few weeks. But there's been this lag and this hesitancy to make any clear and definitive guidelines and statements from our governor and from the Republican-led leadership in Arizona. So I think something as simple as a statewide mask mandate, you know, but it's almost a little too late in everything. We don't know, and even with this press conference that he just got done giving, we still don't have, I didn't hear any more answers, or I didn't hear any more definitive guidelines or metrics for how we're going to safely open our schools. So I just feel like they keep passing the buck because they don't want to take the heat. And, you know, local control is important to Republicans when it suits them. And this is a classic example from
And she's exactly right.
them not supporting us, yeah, and giving us the ability to make local decisions. Because if we did want to close through the first quarter or just go to online learning, TUSD, if we just stayed with online learning through October 1st, would lose about $4 million. He did say in the press conference today that he is going to be giving online learning 100% funding versus the 95% funding that our students currently receive if they choose online learning. But again, there's nothing written yet. There's no, nothing is clear, and it's not in writing. It's hard to make decisions when we don't have clear.
So I had a question for you, Leila. So you said something about the losing money before October 1st. So now, did they ever change that funding formula about the 100 days, whether they were going to do, you know, 100 days in last year's seat time or this year's seat time, or go for a 2%? There was like all wrangling about that several weeks ago. Was that ever decided?
So again, today, he didn't give us any new information on that and said that we're still with the 180-day requirement. And so what he's basically saying is, yeah, you guys can choose to start later. You can choose to do online learning and open up your schools in person later, but it's going to be on you to have to tell your TUSD 6,000 employees that they're going to be working in through next summer with no change. So he did not make any, again.
Are you back? You were fading away again, Leila.
I was fading away.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought I heard him say that all adults in the classroom will be wearing masks. The kids will have some exception. So I thought that was encouraging.
I think I don't think that's a new requirement.
Well, not for TUSD. I mean, you guys already decided you're going to do that. I don't know about the rest of the state.
Right.
And I think that coming from him saying all adults in the classroom will be masked is hopefully something that will be in writing, as you said, and now every school board must at least adhere to that.
Hopefully. My concern is with the charters. I have some Republican conservative acquaintances that are pulling their kids from TUSD because we are requiring children and students to be wearing masks too, so that they can go to the charter schools. And I fear for those kids. And I feel that it's very irresponsible that TUSD, am I still clear? Yeah, okay. That TUSD is following the mayor's orders. We are following CDC guidelines with class size reduction, and we're limiting our class sizes to no more than 15. We're really going to but charter schools and private schools, he said today, private schools don't have to follow any of this, but charter schools don't either, and they're not. And I think it's just going to continue the spread, and where our whole community is vulnerable and going to suffer because there's nothing that is uniform. And if in order for it to be uniform, I believe it has to come from the state.
Okay, so can I read the, I'm going to read part of the press release that the governor's office just sent out as we're sitting here. Would you guys, are you all right with that? Okay, so it's from the governor's office. It says Governor Ducey announces additional dollars, flexibility, and clarity to Arizona schools. I didn't get a whole lot of that clarity, but here's what he said. Announced today additional resources, flexibility, and clarity for the start of the 2021 school year. This Arizona Open for Learning plan provides maximum options for Arizona families, ensures students receive a full academic year of education, invest a total of $440 million in federal dollars to our schools, and gives local school leaders the flexibility and public health guidance to make the best decisions for their students. The governor's plan, developed in consultation with school leaders from across the state, blah, blah, blah. Learning must start immediately. While much of the public discussion has been focused on a date certain, learning needs to start ASAP. The focus should be on ensuring that Arizona students have a successful academic year, and that will in fact look different than ever before given the ongoing pandemic. Regardless of when regular in-person classroom learning begins, each school district and charter school needs to begin teacher-led distance learning by the first day of their traditional instructional calendar. For some districts, that date lands in July. For others, it lands in August. Schools will continue to be required to provide 180 days of instruction or equivalent hours, whether a family chooses to do so in person or via distance learning. Requirements for on-site learning and support services. I can go in, he's got several items bullet pointed here. Then he has another section of benchmarks and flexibility for opening safety. Then he has resources to support face covering. On that, he says to facilitate the safe return to the classroom, all schools will develop face covering policies to protect students and staff. Exceptions will be made for students when they can socially distance, are outside in the playground. During breaks for students to take their masks off in a safe environment, and other exceptions outlined in CDC guidelines. Cloth face coverings should not be worn by children under the age of 2 or anyone who has trouble breathing, is unconscious, incapacitated, blah, blah, blah. Then he talks about the achievement gap. It is a really long thing, but suffice it to say, he really didn't give much new.
It's nothing new. It's all the same. Even the additional funding, I wasn't sure that was new, because then when he broke it down, it was exactly the same amounts that he had said 2 weeks earlier.
Right. So here's what he said on the funding. He says, no matter what school leaders decide to do, this year will look different. He's announcing an additional investment in K-12 education from federal CARES Act dollars, and a total of $370 million in grant dollars to schools. This will ensure budget stability, even with more students learning online. And to qualify, schools will need to provide the on-site learning opportunities and support services. So that sounds to me that you've got to be on-site learning to get the additional dollars. I mean, isn't that what he's saying?
Yeah, so the reason why we decided, unlike Phoenix Union, to hold off on-site, I think they're holding off until October 1st, is because we then are basically playing chicken with the viability and future of TUSD. Because he could just say, well, I'm sorry, it says here you need to have an in-person option, so we're not giving you any of our state funding.
And we know that there are state legislators who would love to see
that. They would love that, the opportunity. I look at this, if you look, if you read about the dark money organizations in Arizona and where it really starts with school choice, and this is a golden opportunity to really dissolve public education through all these weird backdoor ways of cutting off our funding. You're not going to play by our impossible rules. Well, then, sorry.
You can't cut it, so we're going to take over. So here's what they're planning to do. This is one of those Betsy DeVos Koch-funded, Koch brothers funded groups in the CAP. And this idea of micro schools, which are pretty dangerous. So you're going to be hearing about those if you haven't already. Micro schools, we checked in with, what's her name, from Save Our Schools Arizona, Melinda Merkel-Ivor. And so we asked her for some background on these micro schools. And she said they are vouchers. They take money from the general fund, the cost of local public schools. Like other vouchers, micro schools are designed to have very little accountability or oversight, but lots of profit. And stopping DeVos micro grant vouchers and micro schools will be the education fight of 2021. And they are just the latest scheme in a decades-long trend of draining taxpayer dollars out of public schools. So be aware, that's coming.
That's coming. And Betsy DeVos is, I think, jumping up and down with joy, and saying, if you don't open your schools and in person, then we're taking away your federal dollars. Well, that's 10% of our funds. That's tens of millions of dollars for our most vulnerable kids. It's just very cruel policy and cruel decisions.
Remember, we still have a Democratic House in Washington, and I'm reading that the senators are skeptical about Trump's wanting to take away federal dollars. So, I hope we have some checks and balances there.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out, we have a couple of questions in the chat room. Peggy is asking Victoria to put a link to the governor's message in the chat room, if you could. And then Jim is asking, is it safe to assume that all performing arts is kaput, choirs, theater, band, orchestra, not to mention athletics? So he's asking about those other classes that can't be taught on a tablet. Anybody wants to take that?
I can
Leila?
take it for Nathan.
You go first. I'll answer for Amphi.
How are these children going to use the bathroom? These are only a few, booths in these little bathrooms, and they're not going to be able to social distance very well going through those narrow little doors and in and out of the booths and washing their hands. That's going to be a high contact point in their lives every day.
It is. The bathrooms are a big concern. I know TUSD is going to be cleaning them on a very consistent schedule. I think every hour, maybe even every 45 minutes, disinfecting them completely. To get back to the question about the arts, performing arts classes, we are able to do the majority of our curriculum from arts to PE online. It's going to be different.
Lost her. I lost her again. Yo. I think maybe.
She's probably still talking. You're back.
Yeah, she's back. We only lost you for a few seconds.
So we can do the curriculum for the arts, physical education. As far as sports and performances, obviously that can't happen. But again, this is the best way I heard it described is crisis education. And that's where we are. This is temporary. We're asking our families and our educators and our whole community for a lot of grace and understanding. But this is really not permanent. It's not ideal, but we are doing the best we can. And I'm very proud of TUSD's model and the way that we are going with following the CDC guidelines as closely as we possibly can.
I just put a couple of links, one to the governor's website and the other to the Arizona Department of Ed in the chat room. So you can go on there and find the COVID guidance and the latest so-called executive order from the governor. He just gets really good with the half measures. You just don't do anything.
I just wanted to say something. I don't know when this is going to change again, back to normal, where kids are going to go to school every day, not having to wear masks, and where we can go about our normal lives again. I don't know, but I am very concerned about the increased exposure that kids are going to have now in the classroom to radio frequency radiation, because between the long hours on screens they're going to have, which they already have at home, and the exposure to multiple sources of radio frequency radiation from Wi-Fi in the classroom, these kids are going to be exposed every single day to quite a bit of radiation, and there are health effects. I put a link in the chat room that gives you information about those effects based on the science, which include learning disabilities, short-term of course, but affects their learning. They can't think as well, they can't react as well. Their behavior, a lot of kids get more active, hyperactive, and can long-term affect neurology and reproduction. But this is our brave new world here, and everybody's trying to cope, but this is not a good idea. And so there is a lot of science behind this.
I saw an op-ed a couple of days ago, I think it was, in the Arizona Daily Star about children will make it through this. One of the concerns, in addition to what Elizabeth is saying, is having children at home, they're missing out on their social development and these things that we have taken for granted for so long, that the children really need to be with other kids and to learn and experience, and that this won't last forever, and that they will survive this. And I just want to put out there, just as a counselor, that children will benefit in some ways through this. I don't think this is a positive experience, but just as an example of going through some hardships and learning things and how the parents react. Children are going to learn things that they otherwise probably would not have had the opportunity to learn. So it's not, I don't want everyone to feel that it's only bad news. I think kids are pretty resilient overall, and we're going to work with them. We're going to love them through this. We're going to help them through this with everything we've got. I would suggest we continue to put the pressure on the governor. He has no intention of doing a special session, of calling the legislators into session to deal with these important things like opening of schools. And it's not a matter of setting a date to open for school, but it's more important of how will we know, how will we get to that point when it's time to open for in-person classes. And so there's just, he has been a dismal failure when it comes to these things. There's no guidance, there's no leadership, there's just obfuscation.
Okay, so we want to have, Nathan had his hand up. You want to have one more quick comment on education? And then we're going to move to Dr. Friese talking about the COVID virus. Nathan?
Yeah, thanks. So from the Amphi point of view, one thing is it's very similar to TUSD. Our art teachers and our PE teachers are doing an amazing job to continue to provide that those classes and that education to our students. In Amphi, and I think this is the same in TUSD, a lot of the extracurricular athletics and arts have been cut. One of the things that this means is that our teachers who rely on the extra money that they have from being a coach or running a club is no longer there. So this is not just teachers kind of going along and we're able to do it. Because our pay is so low because of intransigence from the Republicans in the legislature and Governor Ducey, our teachers have had to for years rely on extra income from these extracurriculars, and they are making tough decisions right now. They are trying to figure out how they are going to financially make it through this school year. One other issue that is Amphi specific, I don't know about the other schools. Superintendent Jaeger has said that teachers will have to buy their own PPE. He has said that the district will provide equipment for students because he views that that is a legal mandate. But he says that it is not a requirement that the district provide PPE for teachers, that will come out of their own pocket. So we have teachers not only who are struggling because of the failing salary schedule and wage schedule in Amphi, not only who are struggling because they are not receiving the extra funds that they depend on, but then are expected to spend more for this equipment that they need to protect them and they need to show up to work. And so that is something that's happening in Amphi that is going to be a big issue. And it comes from the leadership there failing the teachers, just like the leadership, just like the Republicans and the leadership from Ducey's office are failing the teachers from Phoenix.
Dr. Friese, take it away.
Thank you, Pam. I want to say that this discussion about schools has been so very important. Leila, Nathan, what you have said, I've heard you. I completely agree. We have a lack of leadership in the governor's office. We have, and you're absolutely right when you say that they're afraid to make decisions and they're passing the buck. They do that frequently. They do it for taxes. They do it, they make our cities raise taxes when the state won't, and they're doing it again. We need uniformity. We need some very clear instructions on very basic things that all of our school boards have to do, and then we can put the flexibility in, because I think flexibility is important. But masks should be mandated everywhere. We don't need parents pulling kids and moving them because this one is requiring a mask and this one isn't, and vice versa. That's a big problem. So, and I have been talking to Hoffman about these things, believe me. She was up there with the governor today looking like she was working with him. It's very important for them to work together, but there also has to be points of disagreement, and that has to be communicated, and she needs to be a little bit more vocal about where she disagrees.